Hello and welcome. This is a brand new episode of The Road Less Taken, the web series from Nexus Consulting, where we are in conversation with people who've made unconventional career choices, followed their passion, and become extremely successful at it. Today's guest is someone who, through his organization, has triggered a movement around fitness and running that's really taken Bangalore and the rest of the country by storm. After working in the semiconductor technology space, he followed his passion, followed his heart, wanted to do something to transform actually the world of education through running, and also brought in an angle of trying to create a movement around fitness for working professionals and adults. And these two have come together beautifully today in an organization called Runners High. Please welcome our guest for this episode of TRLT, Santhosh Padmanabhan. Hi Santhosh, very thrilled to have you on this episode of The Road Less Taken. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for inviting me on your show, and I'm very eager to have a nice conversation with you.
Likewise, Santhosh. Like I begin most conversations, I want to take you back to your childhood days when you were growing up. Were you this fast running kid even then? Did you used to run around a lot? And is that where the whole passion for running started at some level? But on a more serious note, tell us about, your growing up. What were your ambitions then? Did you venture on the typical education and career path to begin with?
That's quite interesting. So when I was growing up, I actually found out that I could run more by accident than by design. So what happened was there was this one sports day in school, and I was a very young kid, maybe 9 years old or 8 years old. And I tried participating in every event, and I was not getting any prize. So I thought I'll participate in this one event that was for the entire school, which was a 1,500-meter run, but it was like a very long run for all of us at that age. So the entire school participated in that. And I also ran. And I ran 4 rounds without stopping. And all of them were thrilled because I thought I came third, and they also felt that I came third. But then later, some teachers discussed, and they felt that this small boy can't be running so much. And so probably counted his laps wrong. And so they just said no.
Really?
So I cried.
Wow.
I cried that day. But then, but I knew that I could run because I knew within me that I ran those 4 rounds. So I started showing an interest in slightly longer distances. In my mind, I was a long distance runner, right? So it started from there. And then in colony sports and in other places, I would just try and go for all these longer events. I was also inspired by these movies. I don't know if you are aware of Chariots of Fire from those days. So I used to get goosebumps watching those movies. So in school, it started off around my 9th standard that I went for the school sports selections. And I just believed in myself that I could do this 1,500-meter distance, and I did well. So I started representing school. I started winning prizes in those events. I even got an opportunity to actually represent school in the All India CBSE schools meet.
Oh, nice.
But then that's it. Because after that, then reality struck me. Rather than, actually not reality, but my principal and teachers struck me with reality. So they said that, no, you can't be going to all these places and all these events. You are in your 11th standard. You should be focusing on your studies and IIT and this and that. And I just lost it from there. But then I went, I did I attempted all of those usual stuff, engineering and this thing. And I got into NIT Warangal. After all the board results and everything. And in NIT Warangal, like free bird, I was enjoying my freedom, and I got into all sorts of things. I started smoking. I was into spending heavy weekends partying and all of that. But still somewhere this running bug never left me. So what happened was in the college sports, again, I went and participated in the longer events. And somehow I got through, even with all of those unhealthy lifestyle and with no training, I still could represent. And I actually came to a level where I could represent college. And still it carried through. And that was the sort of on and off relationship with running. But it never went beyond middle distances, which was 1,500 meters and 800 meters, not beyond that. At the max, maybe I did a 3K once or twice, but not beyond that. It was never regular training. It was never sincere training and fully into it. But there was this spark. There was this sort of a hidden passion for it in my childhood also.
And then where did your work life take you? You went to the US, and I read somewhere that that's where you had a moment of clarity, so to say, on what life is back in India. Talk us through that.
So what happened was then after college, like with the rest of the people who were headed either towards US or MTech and so on. So everyone wrote GRE and other stuff. So even I wrote it. So I also wanted to apply. So I also applied and I got admitted in a few universities. So I took it up. There was never, I don't know, looking back now, I feel it was never something that I really wanted to do. I didn't pay so much thought to it, but it was more like this is what everyone does, so maybe I should
also going with the flow. Yeah,
correct, just going with the flow. So I applied. I reached the University of Madison, Wisconsin for my master's in computer engineering. I did my BTech in EEE at NIT Warangal. So in Madison, there was no running there. I mean, in fact, I was quite underweight all those years with my unhealthy lifestyle. So at least there was some concern about my weight. So I started going to the gym. But other than that, there was no running as such. While doing my master's, though, I started volunteering for this organization called Asha for Education, which works for to raise funds for schools and NGOs in India in the field of education.
Right.
So there I got to learn more about the system in India. And other thing that stood out was the difference in classes and the education in the US. So coming from NIT Warangal to the University of Madison, I could see the difference, and I could see how there was learning was more about experience, about trying out things and more practical. Whereas in college, it was more like very rudimental and very regimental also. So that stood out for me. And also that sort of drew me towards Asha for Education, because I was also thinking, ironically, that I knew more about the system in India when I came out than when I was there.
Right.
So I felt like I had to give back, and I felt things had to change in India. So there was this passion to change things. So actually, I was more passionate about raising funds and volunteering for Asha for Education. So every time I came back to India during my vacations from the US, I would visit these initiatives also. So that sort of drove me. From there, I finished my master's. I got a job with Advanced Micro Devices, AMD. They manufacturing microprocessors.
Yeah.
So I got a job as a VLSI CAD engineer. So I moved to Austin, Texas. And there I continued to volunteer with Asha for Education. In fact, we sort of got together the chapter there, which was almost dead, and sort of brought it back to life, and got few of us got together and said we should do something. We should raise funds and get support more projects in India. So we started doing that, and that is when we felt we should find some way to raise funds. And we were sort of inspired by the different other Asha chapters and others who were doing fundraising through marathon running.
Right.
And we felt, why not this? Because this seems to be a little bit more effective, because you're working on your contacts, and there is sort of a personal relation when you ask for funds and all of that. So I said, if we have to convince others to raise funds for us by running marathons, we have to do it ourselves. So we had to start off. And that was when I came back to running, sort of. But I was badly out of shape. So the first time I went out to run, I stopped in 100 meters. And I was wondering whether I'd be able to run a marathon. But then I did stick on to training. The first marathon that through 8 months we trained. The beautiful part was not so much the marathon itself, but we were able to raise a substantial amount of funds. Right. So we raised close to $100,000 that year, and every year thereon we kept raising funds. We easily raised quite a bit of funds, and we could support many organizations in India, and that inspired me. So both of these together, the idea of giving back to initiatives, especially in the field of education in India, and also the passion for running, sort of bit me, and from there it just went on and on. I was able to kick off my bad habits also, and I started becoming a regular runner. to the point that the organization that we were partnering with said, why don't you become a coach and start training people?
Okay.
So I started learning with them and became a coach, and that is how it started.
Okay. And the decision to kind of set up Runners High and devote full time to it, when did that happen? Was there a specific trigger point, or was it just part of this longer continuum that you just described?
It was sort of specific, but it was also sort of a culmination of a search. So what happened was, in the US, I worked for about 4 years, and then I felt somehow when I moved to US itself, I knew that I was not going to stick around for long. So it was more about saving some money and coming back.
Okay.
So by the end of the 4 years, I sort of felt that that's it, that I need to come back. So I decided to relocate to the company, and I moved to Bangalore, India, and I was still working with AMD though. But I told myself I'll give 1 year to myself in that time frame, and I'd sort of decided that I'm going to quit the corporate life.
Okay.
Because I was more passionate about all of these causes, and I want to do something. But it was a period where I was really searching. I was not sure what, how, when. I visited various initiatives. The moment I came back to India, I took a few months break, and I traveled across various states, across the north and south and everywhere as possible, visiting various initiatives that Asha works with. I many people's movements, struggles, Bhopal gas tragedy movement, and so many other movements I went and spent time with. Many initiatives, educational schools initiatives, tribal initiatives, remote villages. I visited, spent time in the schools, started knowing more about the initiatives, spent time with the founders. So I was trying to find out what it that I really wanted to do. So at one point, I really felt that I'm going to quit everything. I'm going to get into this human rights struggle and protests and everything.
Okay.
But then I felt that it was a drain in energy. I felt every day I'm going and fighting against something. It's very draining, and I felt something positive has to be there. So in this period, I was also visiting a lot of schools which were working in the field of alternative education, as in sort of providing an alternative to the current mainstream system of education, addressing things that ails the current mainstream education. And this was a recurring pattern in my life, right from school, college, everywhere. I realized that I was actually fighting against this mainstream system of education, which didn't have an alternative point of view, and which made me just follow sort of a pipeline.
Right.
So that sort of inspired me. So when visiting these alternative schools is when I was more and more drawn towards children and education. At the same time, we were trying to kick off this fundraising program in Bangalore. So we took a bunch of runners. The advantage we had in India was we could take our runners to these initiatives, and they could actually experience when they're raising funds for these schools.
Yeah.
So we went to a tribal initiative in Dharmapuri district of Tamil Nadu called Tulir, and spent time there. And some of the kids there joined us on a run.
Okay.
And they did splendid. And I wondered if they're doing so well. And when they showed so much interest in running, I asked them, would you like to train for long distance running? And they said yes. So there it sort of struck me. So I started gave them a schedule, said, why don't you train? So all this while I was thinking, how can I play a role in education? How can I help the children? Then I realized that this is something that I'm passionate about. So why not running? Why not through running that I give back? So then I felt maybe running can be a way of imparting education. So I discussed with many of these alternative schools, and I came up with this idea of including running as a way of learning,
right,
as education, as means of a curriculum. And why not learn about the body, learn math, learn so many things, but through running, through long distance.
Right.
So that sort of really inspired me. That was only one aspect though. The other aspect, missing piece, was if I get out of this, how am I going to explain to my family that I'm still be able to sustain myself?
I was just going to ask you that, yeah.
So then both my brother and my dad were businessmen, so they were open to the idea of business and all of that.
Okay.
So, but they were also practical. So they asked, if you want to do all this, then how are you going to generate income? If you quit your job and you do this, how will you? So then I felt in India at that point in time, there was no concept of a coaching program or a training for long distance running. People used to laugh at the idea of saying that who's going to come and teach me how to run? I've been running all my life. So,
Right.
so I felt that we could do that. And I got in, I was introduced to a friend through common friends, Dr. Rajat, who's into sports science, and he's a sports science specialist. And he also was looking to see if he was also a passionate runner, and he also wanted to start something in the field of running. So we both sort of hit it, and we felt we should get this. So that is why the name Runners High came about, as in one aspect where, of course, the endorphins and the high that you get out of running. The other is also an equivalent to education,
Right.
like a school, right?
High
Runners
school.
High.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was the idea, that we sort of combine these two aspects. But what happened afterwards was something different. It became something much more than that. So
yeah, I mean, I would like to say that from my personal experience, and I am not a runner at all. All my friends know that. Many of the people watching the show probably know that. But the amount of momentum that running seems to have picked up in a very broad circle, in at least in Bangalore, and I hear the same in several other cities, Chennai, Hyderabad, Pune, and so on, is truly remarkable. Do you think? I mean, I'm sure Runners High was one of the organizations that caused this momentum to build. But what other factors would you put to this? Because I presume this is a decade-old trend or so now, with a lot of people taking up.
So Runners High started around 2008 end. So we are one of the oldest organizations for running, coaching, and training.
Right.
We have been seeing this trend, so I know how things have changed in India. But if you look at the way running has picked up as a trend in India, that the path is quite similar to how it was in the US in the 60s and 70s.
Okay.
1960s and 70s. So jogging, if you read up about it, jogging actually came up as a recreational fitness activity in the US only in the 60s or 70s.
Okay.
And then the number of races by 80s, 90s started increasing. The number of people who came into jogging also increased. And India was in that 60s, 70s phase only around 2008, 7 in here. And now we have reached a point where there are races happening all around, and people are sort of
right.
A lot of it has to do with one is the idea of this long distance running coming from other places, like people moving back from the US coming to India, and that could be one influence. The other possibility is that people are being a little bit more conscious about health.
Conscious about fitness. Okay.
The reason they're being more conscious about this is probably because that there is also a lot of instances of unhealthy living. So the doctors are telling them to get fit. So pick up an activity, right? Also, when running is mostly, even now, many people think running is like an individual sport. Right? So there is no support system around it. So you feel like I have to do it alone. Right, and so you feel that it is such a boring thing. So it is people are reluctant to pick it up. Right? But what we made a difference, where we made a difference was we made it a social thing, where we brought together people, made a community around it, and that made a huge difference. And that is why we could sustain and keep growing in many different ways.
All right. And I found that particularly interesting, that this whole what is perceived as something very individual has become a very social and community thing. The way it's been positioned and the way it's kind of worked out.
Correct.
Yeah. And so there are still these two arms, if I might say so, to Runners High. One is the recreational training that is provided to people who want to take up running, who want to get a little bit more serious about that, compete possibly, etc. And then there is still the children's development and education piece that keeps going on, Anya Trust and the other work that you do. Tell us about that.
So that is the interesting part. So when we started, I viewed it as two separate things. So I go and spend time in the schools, I help the children, and to sustain this, I need to generate income. So I go coach others, but what happened afterwards over the years is something beautiful, because what happened was more and more people who came to train with us wanted to learn more about these initiatives.
Okay.
So then a lot of networking started happening. And some of these people started training or started becoming teachers, started doing workshops with the children here. And they started networking quite a bit. So I was always looking at anyone who comes in, I am so and so, I do this. And I wondered, oh, you know dance, you teach dance. Actually, we're in need of a dance teacher. Why can't you come and spend some time? So I do this. So that happened, and that sort of synergy happened. And similarly, many of the children, it's been more than, it's almost 12 years now. So some of the children who graduated from these initiatives are now working, are now placed, but they continue to train with us now with a regular group. So now we have those students coming back.
So you've had movement both ways, so to say.
Exactly. So now I can't see this as two separate things. It's one big community. And people know these initiatives. People, it's common knowledge. What is Ananya test? What is SSK? All of this is common knowledge, and we interact with each other very seamlessly. And it's beautiful to watch, right? And many of these children participate in the same events as our other runners. We go, 150 of us go in a train in 2-3 compartments, and we take part in the same events as our regular runners.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
So it's sort of beautiful to see that, and many of these initiatives will keep growing. Some of the suggestions of initiatives that we work with have come through our own runners.
Okay.
So someone comes and says, I'm involved with this organization and I spend a lot of time with these children and I would like you to be part of it. So then I say, definitely on only one condition, that you will still be involved with this. So we sort of empower them to work with the children, and we provide all sorts of support.
Interesting.
The other way in which we have been growing is that sometimes we have residential communities who come and say that we want to be a part of it. We have a group of about 40-50 people in our residential area. What would you like to do? One thing that I have been careful about is not to create a franchise operation. So I decided that it won't be like a McDonald's where I keep a secret formula and tell that only on my permission you can use. What I wanted was the community to grow. But at the same time, I wanted to empower people. I did not want to grow in scale because I felt then the effectiveness goes away. And it no longer would be like a community or a family. So we said to these residential communities, we will empower you. We will provide all sorts of support, technical support, and everything. We'll train you. And even now, all the coaches in our running groups are actually runners who started out from scratch. So we create coaches out of our own runners. So even from that community, we sort of create some coaches so that they can keep going.
Interesting.
And we have an initiative. When they collect a fee, we never do anything for free, because I felt if you do anything for free, people don't value it. So people who can afford will pay. So in that community, when people paid a fee, we collected that fee, and runners didn't take anything out of it. And I said that you collect it, and you as a group decide on an initiative, maybe a NGO or a school, anything that you all decide to support, you support. And it would be doubly wonderful if you could work with them in getting those community also involved in
running. Back involved into the whole thing.
Involved into running. So maybe you can go spend time with them, train them. So that way we are reaching out to people from all backgrounds with running, and we are getting people.
And you're creating a big multiplier effect through this, right?
Yes. So the idea is that at the essence of runners is this idea of community and inclusion. So you're giving back, yet you're gaining a lot through this. So that was the whole idea. And in this way, we've been growing in multiple fronts.
And over the last 12 years, how has family reacted to this, very different thing that you do? And when you meet people for the first time and they ask you what you do, I mean, does it become funny sometimes to explain this whole path that you've taken?
Initially, yes, it was difficult. I struggled to explain, and I used to say I'm doing this initiative where I'm trying to make running as education. Then I realized this is not going to. So if they ask me in the the relative circle, then I just say I'm a PT master.
Really?
That made it was easier for them to comprehend. Right? But my mom, dad, all of them started understanding. One thing I did was I trained my mom and dad also in running, so they knew what I'm doing. So they have done a half marathon. And they also visited every school and initiative. My mom even now comes to one of the initiatives and she teaches there along with me.
Fantastic.
So regularly at Ananya Trust, she teaches. So they very well know how I'm involved, what I do with the children. And many of the children know my folks. They have grown up meeting them and all of that. So
Fantastic.
that way, my wife knew what she was getting into, because I got married only after I started runners. And
Okay.
that too happened. We met through a common friend, through a runner only.
Of
So she
course.
knew very well what she was getting into.
Right. 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 Uh, Tell me, last couple of questions. You are in the forefront of running, and I would say if you extend that a little bit, the larger sport. You've talked about middle distance running, long distance running, all of it, which is supported by Runners High. Looking at the state of things today, and if you were to do a quick dipstick comparison of both the facilities, focus, ambition, all of that in India versus in any other Western country, whether it's the US or anywhere else in Europe, where do you think we are? And do you think realistically there is a chance that we're going to see an Indian medal at, say, the Olympics in middle to long distance running in the next 3, 4, 5, I don't know, Olympics in our lifetime?
So I feel before we get into the whole idea of infrastructure and coaching support, right? I think what we need to work on is the culture of running.
Hmm.
And as I told you, in the US, jogging or long distance running started in 60s, right?
Hmm.
And Africa has always been the mainstay in long distance running.
Of
But
course.
now, if you see, there are some very credible runners and
Hmm.
amazing runners coming in from the US itself.
Right.
Now, where did the theory of genetics go? Because now suddenly they're doing so well, right?
Right.
It didn't happen overnight. It
Hmm.
didn't happen because they had amazing money and they threw all money at it. No, it didn't happen because of that. It happened because a lot more people took up running.
Okay.
And running became a cultural thing. Now, long distance running, cross country is very common. It's part of every school system, everything, I mean, every aspect in the US. And
Hmm.
it's seen as a fitness aspect. Every sport now has running in it
Hmm.
because they see it as a way of building endurance and stamina.
Right.
I think that is what we should be focusing on first.
Hmm.
From the grassroots level, running should be made accessible, popular, and something that is scientific also,
Hmm.
and properly guided, and through every system, through schools and through every initiative. And
Hmm.
we should start ground up from there. The
Hmm.
more we get people involved, right? I'm
Hmm.
sure there is talent.
Hmm.
We have amazing talent across India, and we will definitely find people showing up very soon with at the level of the world in
Hmm.
terms of competitive running.
Hmm.
If really infrastructure was the question, then how come in Africa you have so much good number of?
Yeah.
It's just that it is
That's the
there
point.
in their culture. People
Yeah.
run. People just naturally go long distances, walk long distances, run long distances, and that is something that we have to work on.
So, do
Running
you
as a
buy into
culture.
the genetics thing at all?
To a certain extent, there is genetics, but there are too many factors, and I feel that
Hmm.
it's just one factor in it, and you can't always just blame genetics or only bank on genetics alone. There's a lot more things to it, because it would be really unfair to say genetics is the only reason that someone's able to win something. There is a lot more to it, I feel.
Hmm.
Um, uh, I don't know. I read somewhere it is not just what you're born with, but what you make with it also is
Absolutely.
important, right?
Absolutely true.
So
Absolutely.
I think we should give credit to that also.
Hmm.
But
And
it will always be a raging debate that
I'm
even
sure.
though I can put in a lot of hard work, because genetics was not on my side, I didn't succeed. I think that is also a
I mean,
uh,
that's actually an excuse for anything in life, for that
correct.
matter, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I also feel at the root of it, we shouldn't be trying to do something just because we want to
You
get
want
into
to
Olympics or win a prize. I
medal,
feel
yeah.
if you make it, the other aspect of making it cultural is to see the other benefits out of running.
Hmm.
Now, I never took up running to go and represent the country or to be in the Olympics.
Sure.
I say I'm a runner, but
Yeah.
I'm not even competitive. I've stopped participating in races and events. Okay?
Right.
I run because I really enjoy it.
Right.
And I feel it's a way of discovering more about myself.
Hmm.
Now,
Absolutely.
I think that is something that we have to encourage, that
Hmm.
running as a passion or as part of a
Hmm.
cultural thing. No? I think if that is normalized, I
Hmm.
feel everything else will follow on its own, and people will be more happy.
Absolutely. Over the last 12 years of running Runners High, if I may say that, what has been your, give me one or two discrete moments which you can say have been your proudest? I'm sure there is a lot of cumulative effect, a lot of multiplier effect, like you said, but what have been like, a couple of the proudest moments you've had?
So this is a very difficult question. You put me on a spot now. So, um, one thing that I was really happy about is when we created a space for long distance running for children with special needs.
Ah, wow.
So we were sort of a catalyst in getting the Special Olympic movement in India to recognize long distance running.
Wow.
And we got many of our special needs children to run 5K, 10K, half marathon. And I think it's a really amazing moment for us because we brought uh, long distance running into Special Olympics.
Fantastic.
And some of the students that we trained also represented India and also participated in the Special Olympics. We helped them organize the national level long distance event. I personally went there and helped them figure out the plan, how to do it, and everything. So that was very special moment, I would say. Um, the other one special thing was we worked with a school with an initiative that works with children with HIV/AIDS.
Okay.
And what they said was the doctors there have written a paper on this, on showing how long distance running and yoga and other physical activity, and we were very much a catalyst in that, in getting a running program for these children, have made a huge difference in their health indices.
Wow.
And they have shown marked improvement, and that has been presented in many conferences on how to help children with HIV/AIDS to deal with it through physical activity and running.
Interesting.
So many such moments exist. I don't want to go on and on, but
very nice. That's very modest of you. And of course, we all know the terrific work that you all are doing. Last couple of questions. Has the COVID pandemic kind of created any setbacks? Has it kind of changed things around? Do you see anything else kind of coming out of this?
So we didn't see it. I wouldn't see it as a setback, but there were challenges, of course. Like everyone else, we were also affected in quite dramatically, also because it was quite sudden, starting with the lockdown, which was quite sudden. So what happened was, I felt it was more like evolution. We sort of adapted and evolved to how things were, right? So one thing that we did was the schools that we worked with were the most affected because the children had to go home, and at home there was very less access. So we did immediately we worked on and did a drive to provide groceries and support during the lockdown period. So we did and thanks to our running community, we raised quite a bit of funds, close to 30 lakhs we raised, and we provided support, groceries and rations for many families, almost 2,000 families we reached out. So this was possible only because of our involvement in both, and people believed in what we did, right? The other aspect was with the schools and initiatives, because we couldn't meet in person, we had to adapt through social media. So I was not a big fan of social media, but now I have everything is through social media and video conferencing and so on. So we started with that. We started doing classes. Some of the children access was a problem. So then we adapted even more. And we started doing classes through WhatsApp. We would record short videos and send, and we would get them to participate. So one thing we did to keep them active was create unique challenges and ask them to post about their activity for the day on the group. So that way we made sure they remained active. So including our children with special needs, children with physical challenges, all of them stayed active through the pandemic. We created unique virtual events, virtual challenges, where we encourage them to do any kind of exercise, just walking inside the home, walking upstairs, doing yoga. So we encourage them, and we sort of got them to be more active. And we have done many such things. It's there on our social media page.
Fantastic.
With the runners who were training with us, we adapted. We said we are not going to meet as a group. We still don't, because we still feel it is not ideal or safe to do that. And we feel we should be a responsible organization and not do it. Though the government has no norms around it, we are going to be responsible about it, because we feel unless it is a life or death situation, or if it is an economically sustaining activity, the only economic sustenance it does is for me. And I decided I don't mind taking a hit, but people shouldn't be risking their lives for it. So we decided not to meet as a group, but we meet online. So we do strength training sessions through Zoom. We also did information sessions, panel discussions through Zoom, and other video conferencing. People run on their own, and we keep in touch through the WhatsApp groups. We stay and people train. Amazingly, everyone kept on with it, and our community spirit is still on. We
Fantastic.
create many unique ways of staying in touch and campaigns on social media that keeps them, motivated, excited about the whole thing. So we've been going on evolving ourselves according to the needs.
Fantastic. Great to hear. Great to hear. So before I let you go, a final couple of questions for you to answer very quickly. Two very different questions. One is from your experience just as an entrepreneur. You took this plunge. You got away from a secure corporate job and you decided to do something where your heart led you. What advice would you give to others contemplating similar things? Right. That's question number one. Question number two is for the lay person watching this who is not yet into running, what are 2 or 3 tips you would give them to get started?
Okay. For the first question, there is actually the answers might be similar for both the questions. Actually, there is no such thing as a good time to start. If you keep thinking that I have to save enough, then I will start, right? When you're jumping into a new career or a new entrepreneurship, um, nothing will be enough. You will start saving and you'll start thinking, okay, now till I get married. Then you'll say, okay, till my kid goes into college. It will keep going till the time you retire, right? So there is no end to it. So there is no safe time where you should start. The second is, there is no need for you to jump into it foolhardy. Nobody's saying that you let go of everything, just jump overnight. You can be smart about it. And that's what I did. You start with a small pilot and spend only lesser amount of time, get a feel for it and get a taste for it and see if this is something that you would like to do full time. And you can start with small pilots and see how it feels, and then have a nice plan, discuss with your friends, be open about it, get opinions, and then transition. But transition, I really, you should have a plan and have some goals, sort of a timeline and transition. If you're going to only keep it as an idea and as an aspiration, it will stay there only. You have to put it into action. The other question for anyone who's wanting to get fit, get into running, right? The first tip remains the same, which is to get started. Don't wait for a good day. If it's tomorrow, just go out.
Yeah.
And you don't, again, the second tip also remains the same. You don't have to think of something big. Start with something really small, just a 10-minute walk, a 5-minute walk, and it's okay. And do it slowly. And every day you progress, you tick off. Write it down on a piece of paper or on a board and say, I did it. So just put a tick mark. The more ticks you see on your board or on paper, the more encouraged you would be to go out and keep going. So instead of counting the days you're missing, start counting the days you're doing. Automatically, you will start doing more. The other is, I keep saying running. There's no shame in walking. So start with walking. Even now, I do a run walk. When I have to do very long distances, I take walk breaks in between. So there's nothing wrong with it. So don't see walking as a shame or anything. It is a very smart strategy to walk and give your muscles a little bit of rest.
Fantastic.
One bit that I would also say is, don't get overexcited and carried away. And most of the injuries, and this we have seen everywhere in our running community, in any running group you take, any runner you take, they will attest to this idea that 90% of the injuries are caused by overtraining, not because of a lack of training. Okay. Because you do too much. So once you get into it, just be balanced about it and don't overdo. That's about it.
Thank you. Fantastic tips. And I really liked the positive approach part that you said. Instead of always worrying about, hey, I missed it out today, yesterday, some call happened, I had to go here, I missed it out. But the number of days you've done it actually is a good positive reinforcement. And I think that kind of epitomizes you as well as Runners High as an organization. Our very best wishes to you. May your tribe grow, get bigger, better, and all the very best for a very successful 2021 and the time ahead. And thank you very, very much for sparing your time and sharing your insights on the show.
Thanks a lot, Venki. This was wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. So that was a fascinating conversation with Santhosh about his initiatives through Runners High to transform both the worlds of education and fitness, and how these two have converged, and how he's managed to follow his heart, follow his passion, been very successful, very happy, and transformed thousands of lives. We hope you liked that. We will continue to bring you episodes of The Road Less Taken, where we meet and talk with several more interesting people. If you have anyone in mind you'd like to recommend, don't hesitate to write into us on any of our social media handles. All past episodes in full and highlights packages are available on our YouTube channel, Nexus Consulting, and you can find links to them on our Insta, Twitter, and Facebook pages. We have a brand new website as well, consultnexus.in. Do go and look it up, and do continue to share these stories with people whom you know, whom you think might be inspired by it. On behalf of Nexus Consulting and the entire team here and all our guests, let me wish all of you a very, very happy and successful 2021. 2020 is a year that none of us is going to forget, and 2021 will hopefully create many memorable, for the right reasons, occasions for all of us. On that note, continue to stay home, stay safe, have a great holiday season, and we will see you soon in another episode of TRLT. This is Venki saying bye-bye.